until I lay my head. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Let's all sing this together. I love your voice.
I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest nights, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. Oh, and all my life you have been faithful. Oh, yes, you have. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, yeah. And all my life you have been faithful. Oh, yes, you have. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
This morning, I want to start something new with you. I'm excited about it. I have been ever since I started studying about it. We have done a study in the church on the book of Esther, and I inadvertently announced last week that the Lord was now leading me to a new woman, and I did not mean that to sound like it did, but we're going to be looking at the book of Ruth. And so if you want to be looking at that, we're going to eventually get to it. I've got a little bit of introduction that I want to share with you before we do that. But I want you to tell you that the book of Ruth is really, for me, it's a tremendous book about conversion and salvation. And the more I look at it, the more I begin to see it. And what is said about David, I believe, can be said about Ruth, that she is a woman after God's own heart. So before we get to the book itself, let me just share with you that the story of Ruth actually begins, of all places, in Sodom and Gomorrah. And tonight, if you'll come back at 6 o'clock, we're going to be looking at particularly that story in Genesis 19 about Lot and Sodom. But we're not going to be studying that this morning. I just want you to see that this is kind of the setting of the background. See, Sodom and Gomorrah was a story about judgment as well as salvation. God sending his angels in to rescue Lot and that portion of his family that was prepared to leave the city before he rained down judgment on it. You may remember the story. Lot's wife wasn't really ready to leave. She couldn't bear to leave Sodom behind, so she has become a salty reminder to the inability to let go of an old life. That will be significant when we start looking at the life of Ruth. Because what Lot's wife couldn't do, Ruth did. You see, it's after the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah that sets the stage for this remarkable romance tale, almost a Hallmark movie of Ruth's life to take place that wouldn't even take place for more than 1,000 years later. You see, after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his 2 daughters, the only ones that they could get out of the city, were called upon to flee to a small area called Zoar, where Lot and his daughters hide in a cave. Now, his daughters, I don't know what they were thinking. It was probably, they thought, from seeing that massive destruction, that perhaps it was more global than they had anticipated, because for some reason in Genesis 19, I'm going to have these on the screen, so you can just look at them. You don't have to turn it. You're welcome to if you would like to. But they think they're the only ones left. And in Genesis 19, verses 31 and following, it says, "Now the firstborn said to the younger, 'Our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come in to us as the custom of all earth.' And so on her advice, she says, 'Come, let us make our father drink wine. We'll lie with him, and maybe we can preserve the lineage of our father.' So verse 37 says, 'The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab.' He's the father of the Moabites to this day. And this is what sets the stage for the story of Ruth. You see, Moab, that son of actually an incestuous relationship between Lot and his oldest daughter, settled in an area southeast of the Jordan River and of the Dead Sea. And although they were related to Israel by Lot being the nephew of Abraham, they were not part of the covenant that God made with Abraham. They were kind of like, I guess, what you would call distant cousins several times removed. And the next mentioning of the Moabites doesn't occur until Israel is in the wilderness after they have come out of Egypt. They're making their way from Egypt back to Canaan, and they had to pass through the region of Moab. And when they do, the Moabites were not very crazy about them coming through. They were now their own nation. They had their own gods. And in the book of Numbers, in the 22nd chapter, we read the story, and you are probably familiar with this story, that Balak, the king of Moab at that time, hires a local prophet named Balaam. Now, he's not of Israel, but he is a prophet that somehow communes and speaks with Jehovah. He refers to Jehovah when he talks about his blessings and his oracles. But he hires Balaam to curse Israel. In Numbers 22, 1 through 7, it says, "Then the children of Israel moved and camped in the plains of Moab on the side of Jordan across from Jericho." Moab was exceedingly afraid. The nation itself was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was sick with dread because of the children of Israel. The verses go on to say that Balak decided he would hire this local prophet to come out and curse Israel. In verse 5, it says, "Look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth, and they're settling next to me. Therefore, please come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too mighty for me." And he acknowledges that whoever he blesses is blessed, whoever he curses is cursed. And verse 7 says, "So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed from the diviner's fee, with the diviner's fee in their hand, and they came to Balaam and spoke to him with these words of Balak, to come and curse the land." Well, let's just shorten the story a little. You already know much of what happens. Balaam talks to God. God says, "Don't go." He tells him, "I can't go." And they said, "Well, we'll offer you more." And he says, "Well, let me go back and see if God has something else to say." Eventually, God says, "You go with them, but you only say what I say." And so the story goes on that he goes with them, but instead of cursing, he blesses Israel. Not once, not twice, about 4 times he blesses Israel. Balak is really put out with his responses. But then Balaam does something that it takes the book of Revelation to explain to us what happened. He put a stumbling block before Israel through Moab. That's why the message directed to the church of Pergamos in the book of Revelation mentions Balaam in this way. He says in Revelation chapter 2, I have a few things against you. You have there those who hold the doctrine of Balaam. And Balaam taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual adultery. What he basically said was, I want to teach you how you can compromise Israel, and you can do it by encouraging them to intermarry with the Moabites and to teach them about their gods. And that became the downfall of Israel all throughout the rest of their wilderness wanderings, and even as they entered into the promised land, the land of Canaan, when they crossed the river. Joshua, the whole book of Joshua, they have trouble driving out everybody. They're learning about the gods of the Canaan. So that when you get back to the book of Numbers, what you find is that Israel, chapter 25, remained in the acacia grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, the Moabites did, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. And Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. Moab was a thorn in the side of Israel. So much so that when Moses began to reveal the law to them in the wilderness, he even had some certain restrictions that were put in place to try to protect them from the seduction of other gods. And in Deuteronomy 23, 3 and 6, it says, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the, and get this, the 10th generation. None of their descendants shall enter the assembly of the Lord forever. Why? Because they did not meet you, verse 4, with bread and water on the road when you came out of Egypt. And because they hired against you Balaam, the son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you. Bottom line is, you shall not seek their peace nor their prosperity all your days forever. That was the relationship between Israel and Moab. Their chief deity of Moab was a god named Chemosh. And when Solomon began to follow the gods of his many wives years and years later, he actually built worship places for these foreign gods, including this god of Moab, Chemosh. In 1 Kings chapter 11, it says Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem. They had always been a thorn in their side. Eventually Moses will die. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but when he died in the land of Moab. He'd been taken to a mountain. He'd been shown the promised land from that mountain, and there he died, and God buried him. Deuteronomy 34 says, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord, and he, God, buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, and no one knows his grave to this day. Joshua takes over. They go into the land of Canaan. They no longer have to deal with the Moabites, but now they have to deal with all these other Canaanite gods. And what they learned with Moab, they began to follow through with there. And the whole story of Joshua is a place of conquest, but they never completely clear out the land. And because they never completely clear out the land, they enter into the book of Judges with kind of this roller coaster of being put into subjection by nations around them, crying out to God, God delivering them through a judge, and then they would fall back into their sin with the other gods, with the other nations. One of the nations God uses to subject Israel is Moab. In the book of Judges, chapter 10, we read that the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, served the Baals and the Ashtoreths, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab. And they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. Moab was continually a thorn in the side of Israel. When you read through this 10th chapter, you find that Israel had to pay tribute to Moab through their king Eglon. God raises up a judge named Ehud. We've looked at this story before on Wednesday nights. He carries a tribute to Eglon and then assassinates him with that left-handed sword of his. It is somewhere around this time that our story takes place. Turn to Ruth, chapter 1. It's a long introduction. But now we get to the place where we want to start with the book, because you need to know the background of where Ruth is living and where Elimelech, Naomi, and his sons traveled to. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "It came to pass in the days when the judges ruled," that's the period we were just talking about, "there was a famine in the land." Now, let me just pause there and say, God uses famine to move people. We've seen that. We saw that last Wednesday night when we talked about famines. He used a famine to move Israel to Egypt. He used a famine and a drought for Elijah to confront the prophets of Baal. He used a famine to show his salvation in Samaria, overcoming Syria. Through this famine, he moves a certain man from Bethlehem to the country of Moab. We don't know very much about this man at all. He's not spoken of much before, and he's not spoken of much later. But in the rest of verse 1 and then in verse 2, it says, "A certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech. The name of his wife was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there." If you did not know the background of Moab, that line would not have made as much significance to you. But this was an enemy place. Sometimes famine moves us to places that we really don't need to be. And yet that's not what this story of Ruth is about. If it was, well, it would have had a different name. What you find is that at this point right now, they are leaving Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem, I hope you realize from all the Christmas times that we've spent together, Bethlehem means house of bread. Well, the irony is that they're in a famine and they couldn't make bread. So they've left Bethlehem. They've decided to travel east. They cross the river. They head south to the country of Moab. It's a journey of roughly about 50 miles. It's not that hard. It would take about 7 to 10 days to travel by foot. But it is from this point on, from verse 3 forward, that the story progresses rather quickly. Look at verse 3. Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. We don't know how soon after they got there. We know that he died. She was left and her 2 sons. And verse 4, they now took wives of the women of Moab. The name of one was Orpah, not Oprah. Sometimes that gets confused. No, Oprah's not in the Bible. It's Orpah. And the name of the other, Ruth. And they dwelt about 10 years, says the rest of verse 4. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman, Naomi, survived her 2 sons and her husband. I don't know if you realize it, but the first 10 years of this story takes place in 5 verses. Because this book is not about an Israelite family in a foreign land. It's not like the story of when Israel was in the wilderness and had to deal with foreign gods. It's not like the story of when Israel came into Canaan and had to deal with foreign gods. It's not like the story of the book of Judges where they kept being subjected by nations with foreign gods. No, this isn't that story. It's a story of a pagan woman who came in contact with an Israelite family who taught her about the one true God of the universe. This story is the flip side of everything that Israel has been experiencing. Because instead of being deceived and beguiled and drawn away by pagan gods, we have a story that's not called Naomi. We have a story that's called Ruth. Because it's a story of a godly conversion of a person leaving their family and their gods behind to follow the one true God. Ruth's story begins where Naomi's life hits rock bottom. Naomi, just to summarize what we've seen so far, has followed her husband to a foreign land with 2 sons. They marry foreign women. Her husband dies, and afterwards her 2 sons die. The story of Ruth could have been about a Jewish widow who lost her family, but instead it's about a Moabite widow who finds a new family, and so much more. Ruth is a story that begins with death, but it ends with hope. Ruth found a new life when she allowed her old life to die in Moab. You see, unlike Lot's wife, Ruth wasn't bound to her old life. She wasn't bound to her old people. She was about to be set free. Look at verses 6 and following. Then she, speaking about Naomi, arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread back in Bethlehem. Now, don't let that simple statement pass you by. This is big. Naomi heard while she was in Moab that the Lord had visited his people with bread back in Bethlehem. Now, think about it for a moment. That's how he saved you and I. He visited his people with the bread of life. He called us out of a land of darkness to come to him. And that's how you respond to the offer of salvation. You leave where you are, you come to him. This is a big, beautiful story of salvation. Naomi, she's going to return to her land and to her Lord, to her God. But Ruth is coming to join her. And she's going to leave her land behind. Don't lose the significance of that. On the surface, Naomi assumes that her daughters would want to stay, or daughter-in-laws would want to stay behind and find new husbands from among their people. Look at verse 8. Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you dealt with the dead and with me," speaking of her husband and their son and her sons, their husbands. And then she says in verse 9, "The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. That is not really what they needed. You see, there's a difference between finding rest, living a good life, settling for those things that make you happy and whatever you can do with it, and never really finding the rest for your soul, finding salvation. She was hoping they would find rest. God wanted her to find salvation. In essence, Naomi's not doing them a favor by sending them back to their people. And they say to her, verse 10, "Surely we will return with you to your people." Naomi takes the next couple of verses to explain that, look, I have no more children in me. I can't give any more birth to sons. And even if I did, would you wait until they were old enough to marry and then marry my sons? I can't help you. She can't provide for them new husbands. She encourages them to go back to their own homes. Well, Orpah does. She turns back. But Ruth won't let go of Naomi. Look at verse 14. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and you can almost put in parentheses, kissed her goodbye. But Ruth clung to her. She was not going to let her go. Naomi tries to convince Ruth to return like her sister-in-law did. She says in verse 15, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods." And that was the problem. Naomi tries to say, "Why don't you return back with your sister-in-law?" And she appeals to Ruth to return to her people and her gods. And I can't help but see in this particular moment in Ruth's life that it triggers a response that Ruth begins to express what has been welling up inside of her soul. Allow me to put words in her mouth that aren't on your scripture. What she does say is incredible. She gives the most powerful speech of commitment to be found by a Gentile up to this time. It's a quote that many times, often is used in marriage ceremonies between a man and a woman, though here it's between two women. It's a speech that speaks of love and commitment, but it speaks of abandonment of the past and a full faith in the future where a new God and a new home await. She begins in verse 16 by saying, "Entreat me not to leave you. Turn back from following after you." Literally, do not urge me to leave you. If you allow me to, again, like I say, put some words in Ruth's mouth, it's kind of like she's saying, I've watched you. I've watched you since you've come into our land. I know where you have come from. I watched you, your family, your son, who became my husband, Chilian, and have seen the devotion you have to love one another and to love the God you serve. You still talk about him. Being in a foreign land hasn't caused you to forget your home and your God, even though it's been 10 years. There must be something special about it. She probably thinks to herself, we don't have that kind of faith here. My people, the Moabites, they began with unrighteousness, so to speak. The whole story of Lot and his daughters. We've been suspicious and dishonest with ourselves and others ever since. We hired a prophet to curse you, for goodness sakes. And now, most recently, we have oppressed you and demanded tribute from you, and yet you still come here when you have a need. You came here and showed me kindness. I think Ruth looks at Naomi and says, there is something different about you, and I want to have it in my life as well. Please don't send me back. Church, that's what the Christian witness is all about. It's when through our actions and the things that we share and the things that we talk about, people can pick up on the fact that we have a God of love that loves them and loves them in a way that they've never experienced before. It conveys a love for people that surprises them, inspires them to want what we have. Or maybe I should say to want who we have. We've been called salt and light for a reason, folks. We've been called light not to just expose sin, but to show the light of God and the love of God through the good works. He says, let your light so shine that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. We have been called the light of the world. We've been called the salt of the earth. Why? Well, there's a lot of things you can say about salt. It's flavorful. It's different, but you know what I've discovered most about salt? It's salty, and it creates thirst. And your life and my life should create thirst in others in such a way that they come away saying, I want what they have. I want to find the water of life that they have received. She went on to say, for wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. And then this part right here, which is really a lot stronger than we make it out in as though it's just kind of a pleasant thing to say at a wedding. Your people shall be my people. She is repudiating her people. She's saying, I no longer want to be a Moabite. I want your people to be my people. But more than that, I want your God to be my God. This is her declaration of repentance and commitment. She's now ready to literally go wherever God leads through Naomi. Her greatest statement is her desire to change from being a Moabite to an Israelite and then a follower to a true God away from those of the false gods that she'd been following. Folks, this is big. This is a conversion. Do you realize if she had not repudiated her people, if she had not said, I no longer want to be a Moabite, that she would just have been a Moabite following an Israelite to her home? But Ruth changed her heritage when she changed her God. And do you know why that's important? You remember what we found in the law? If she hadn't If she was still just to be a Moabite, although when she gets to Bethlehem, that's how they look at her. But God doesn't look at her that way. But if she had just been a Moabite, her descendants to the 10th generation would not be allowed into the assembly of the Lord. And that would include her great-grandson, David. Because that's the woman we're talking about. This is the woman who becomes the great-grandmother of David. When it comes to Jesus, when we come to Jesus, it doesn't matter what family we may have been raised in. We now have a new family. We belong to the family of God. And in a sense, I guess you could say that Ruth experienced her own being born again into a new family. In Ephesians chapter 3, Paul makes this statement. He says, "For this reason I bow my knees to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom," and don't miss this, "the whole family in heaven and earth is named." That's why they call us, one of the reasons why they call us Christian. We bear his name because we are in his family. You have come out of one family and have been adopted and born again, both into a new family. That's what Ruth wanted. She wanted to be a part of a new family. There was an occasion when Jesus was teaching with a large group, and his mother and brothers and sisters came looking for him. You'll find in Matthew 12, it just simply says, while he was still talking to the multitudes, his mother and brothers stood outside seeking to speak with him. And one said to him, "Look, your mother and your brothers are standing outside seeking to speak with you." And he answered and said to the one who told him, and don't miss this, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers?" And he wasn't being facetious. And he also wasn't challenging his own family relations. He was trying to make a point. He says in verse 49, he stretched out his hand towards his disciples and he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers." And I note he didn't say, "Here's my father," because his father's in heaven. And then he says to everyone, "Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother, my sister, and mother, and belongs to my family." The point he was making was not to distance himself from his family, as much as he wanted to endear himself to you and I, his followers. As followers of Jesus Christ, we have become family together in him. That's why in the church they used to call one another brothers and sisters. Wasn't just reserved for the pastor. They would talk about Sister Sue and Brother Bill. It's because we are family. And Ruth wanted to be more than just family to Naomi. She wanted a family with Naomi's people and Naomi's God. Folks, you don't join a church. You unite with a family because you want to. You sense your belonging with them here. You feel a part of them. You share in common the Lord Jesus Christ, which makes us brothers and sisters. Ruth was seeking a family, and she found it in the God of Naomi. She found herself in pursuit of God's own heart, and that is why I call her a woman after God's own heart. She was in pursuit of it. And just like her great-grandson would be, he too would be called David, a man after God's own heart. And that's where the story begins. That's where your story can begin, if it hasn't already. Have you decided to follow Jesus and become part of the family of God? If the book of Ruth teaches us anything, it's that anyone can. It doesn't matter where you came from. Anyone can. We come just as we are, but he does not leave us as we come. He changes us and conforms us to the image of His Son. Are you part of the family of God? Let's pray.